Hey there, I'm Stan Baker, one of the hosts of CircleForum, along with Shelley Steele and Steve Young. Our guest this week, who starts off our new season 10, is Dave Johnson, Vice Principal of Watson Road Elementary School District 23 in Kelowna, British Columbia. We're asking principals this season and vice principals, what's your advice for new principals or assistant principals? And Dave has lots of great advice based on his experience, particularly the stories around how he was part of a team to make the school an anti-racist community. It's a story worth listening to. So if you're currently just new to your role in school administration, or if you're thinking about it, then this episode is for you because it's full of experience-based advice from Dave. Throughout our conversation, listen to how Dave comes back to these two things again and again in various ways. Get to know people and ask questions, open-ended questions. At the end of this episode, be sure to visit our website, www.restorative.ca, where you can find some great open and restorative questions. If you enjoy this episode, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, CircleForum. Steve's away, so let's head over to this discussion with Shelley and me, Stan. Welcome, Dave. It's good to have you here. Off the top of your head, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you want to give some advice? Somebody is new to a vice principal role.
Yeah, I would say this is my 10th year in this role as vice principal. And I think the important part of my learning along that journey has been get to know people and ask questions. But this is my third school, and every school I've been at has been quite different. I think the important piece is to understand the community and get to know the community, but certainly ask questions and build relationships and find people that you can lean on.
So I'm curious with the questions. Have you asked a question that you thought, ooh, that was not a good question to ask in this situation? I'm going to change how I ask questions. Or have you had questions that you thought, oh, that worked really well?
I would say going back to open-ended questions is an avenue to let people speak, and you need to be that active listener as well. Asking closed-ended questions can sometimes come across the wrong way with people, especially if they don't know you quite well yet. So asking those open-ended questions, tell me about this or tell me about yourself, goes a long way in eliciting a little bit of trust, but also gives them the freedom to answer a question how they want to. So I would say when you go in hot on a question, and if what can be perceived as confrontational, you're not going to have that success that you would if you're going in with an inquiry mindset.
It really is key, isn't it? Because we can sound like we're moving into interrogation mode really quickly. And particularly in schools in the fast pace, we just need information. And so we're heightened that way too. So to really step back and think about, okay, how am I still going to get this information, but not put a person on defensive mode is really a key. Yep.
One of the things that stood out for me over the last 3 years of your work was the anti-racism team that you've put together. Can you tell us a little bit about how you led that and what did it take to get that even started?
In my first year at this school, it was fairly early in the year, and it's a big school, 630 kids, and we have 70 staff. So it's growing in its diversity. And I think historically, the community hadn't been so diverse. But what happened was an incident occurred outside on the playground where a racial slur was made towards a grade 4 boy who was Black. And it was reported to me right away. So as I investigated the situation, talked to the student, and I talked to the parent of the student who was the victim of the racial slur. It got me thinking about how do we respond to these things, because they do happen. Racial slurs, racism is out there, even if it's not clearly on the surface. So I took that story. I wanted to do something more than just from a disciplinary action. I wanted to dig deeper into how can we serve our community as a whole. I took our story to our staff. We happened to have a staff meeting that same week, and I shared the story with them. And I asked the group who wants to be a part of this journey with me and learn about the racism that's happening, how to respond to it, and how do we become an anti-racist learning community? So right away, 10 staff members were excited to join this journey. We framed it around learning and what's our vision? What do we want to do with this? And as we went through the year, we started to learn about more situations happening. Students were coming to us, parents were coming to us with situations that had happened to their kids. And it just started growing from there, but it was really framed around a single incident, but it's grown into a point in our third year where we've established it as a school goal, intercultural competencies. And our equity team has grown to 15 members. Yeah, it's been a slow journey, but it's gaining traction, and it's really changed the mindset of our school, our staff and students.
I really like how you play into what educators like to do, which is learning, right? So we're going to make this part of our learning. And guess what? You also are a subject of some learning here too. How did that go over? Like, how did staff receive that?
I think at the beginning, we had a number of people who were initially really wanting to join it. And then we have the other people who are going to sit, and they're concerned. It's not that they lack concern or empathy or a want to do it. They just maybe don't know what it's quite about yet. We took learning to staff meetings, and then we engaged our broader staff through that. But it was an opportunity for us to understand what did our staff need outside of that initial group of 10. What did they need from their learning? What did they need for their own perspective taking? And where did we have to start with them?
Did you hear the great question there, Shelley? I love that question that you're asking. What did you need? Or what did they need? That works for everybody, right? And asking that of staff, I think it's very relational, right?
Even starting right at the beginning of your story, you ask the staff, who wants to be part of this? Who wants to go on this journey? You're already saying, I don't have this all figured out, but who wants to join me in helping to try and figure some of this out and get better at what we're doing? So you're already bringing people along there. It was a very fair process is what it is. The expectation is we can't continue to have this happen at our school. We don't know all this. We've got a lot of learning to do, but who wants to come with me to do it? So it's already, the defenses are down. As okay, we cannot know all the information and still learn something and be vulnerable. Yeah.
And I think a key part of that was that we made it contextual for them. It wasn't just about this might be happening in our community. Yeah. They knew it was happening in our community, and it made it real for them. And when it became real for them, there was no way they could look away from it.
We just didn't know what to do with it before, but you're helping to guide some of that, and at least ask the questions or do the wondering and be curious about what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
So leading with curiosity is really what I'm hearing.
Yeah, for sure. Leading with curiosity, inquiry mindset, but a lot of humility too, saying that we're learners. We will make mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes. So we really wanted to create a safe space for our staff to say, okay, I'm going to join in too, or at least I'm willing to listen, or I want to listen because I won't be judged.
Right.
Now,
that's key.
Yeah, it is. And not everybody bought in right away, because some people would say things like, this is just one more thing on our plate, right? How did you deal with that?
Absolutely. And yeah, we tapped into the importance of the work, and again, kept talking about those stories, talking about those students who are sitting in front of them in their classroom and saying, these are real people. And this isn't one more thing on the plate. This is the plate. We need to weave it into everything we do. And it shouldn't be more work. It's just a shift in how you look through your lens. And it's a shift in mindset and understanding that we come from, most of our staff is white. So we come from a white privilege and can't even begin to relate to what the experiences are, the lived experiences of our community are. So they just needed to become aware, and the stories that we would tell or share made it real.
You have to speak to the heart first and then the mind. So if you were just talking about anti-racism and this research and that research, sure, there's some learning that goes on there, but it doesn't connect when you're putting a face. These are the little people that they care and take care of and teach, and you put the face to it. So that spoke to the heart, and okay, now what we can do with the mind part of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's hard work, but it's heart work at the same time.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned before that you had a parent roundtable and parents came in and told some stories. What was it like for staff to be there and hear those stories? And what was it like for you to hear those stories?
As the process went during that first year, you start to build relationships with the families that you work with. And so right away, I started asking, like, how can we make a difference in your child's school experience? And the idea came about, I'd like to invite the parents to a panel and have them talk to our equity team. Near the end of the year, we selected people based on those solid relationships, people that we knew felt comfortable talking and sharing their stories, to a parent panel. And I sent them some guiding questions to prepare them for what was going to happen. And then it just unraveled as a authentic conversation with parents who are sharing their stories, but their children's stories. And it was amazingly powerful to hear them share their experiences with us. And even the other day, I was talking to one of the people on the team, and they said it's easily the most powerful learning experience that they've had. And multiple people on our team have said that. And I would say it's the same for myself. It was just such a powerful experience to hear their stories. And that's what hit home for all of us was, first of all, their vulnerability. And then the fact that they were able to trust us with their stories, and then to help guide our future work. We didn't just want to hear their stories and say, okay, thank you. We wanted to say, okay, what do we do next? What's our next steps? And then when the second year, that was our platform, is what that feedback was.
I'm really curious. I'm guessing these are parents that probably wouldn't have put their hand up or said, sign me up for sharing this with people usually. So how did you build that trust to get them to the point to be able to do that in such a public way?
Well, I think it was having dialogue with them as the year progressed, but it was also them understanding that we were working for them and their child and responding to the incidents that were brought to us. And that work for their child elicited that trust. And it's phone calls, it's getting on the phone and saying, this is what happened today, and this is how we're dealing with it. And inviting them to the process was a big part too, but a couple of the parents said they just appreciated being invited to be a part of it. In our system, sometimes parents they're told what it is. And we didn't want to do that. We wanted to, because we had that learning mindset, we wanted to have them shape our work and be a part of that work as well. So we have that parent representation, and we're going to have another parent panel near the end of this year as well. We're looking at who do we already have some parents that have expressed an interest to be a part of that journey and process. So we know who we can already invite, but we're going to put it out to the community as well and say, who else is out there that wants to share their story in this safe environment? And although it wasn't such an open forum, we had it in our library with our equity team, and there was 10 or 11 of us sitting around this table with us six parents. So it was a very safe environment. And we talked about the confidentiality and the promise that your stories are safe in this room, because we didn't want to violate their trust or their privacy. And that went a long way to help them feel like they could talk. And we honored that today. We still don't publicize this is what the parent panel yielded, but we do talk to our staff about this is what came about from it.
I love, and Shelley, you've heard me say this before. I love how invitational you are. And like invitational as a leader in the school to invite people in, I think is a very healthy and relational way of addressing whatever the concern is, because this is a big deal, right?
It is, and we don't want to make mistakes. We know we will make mistakes, but we want to make sure we're honoring the parents and the students first.
Facilitating the conversation, you're not leading it, right? Which is very restorative, that I'm going to help people move through the conversation, but by no means am I the expert on this, but I'll facilitate the conversation and bring people together.
Absolutely, and that goes a long way to gaining that credibility with the people you're trying to serve. Is we're learning ourselves, and we can't expect them to tell us what we need to do. We should just do it. We can't expect people of color to say, tell us what we need to do next. It's not like that. We need to just invite them to share their stories and share their experiences so we're aware of it. And then, we're doing the work, and the feedback we get is important to help shape our direction.
Now, you mentioned the word mistakes and vulnerability. As a leader, can you see or even talk about a mistake or mistakes, or I don't know how much time you have for how many mistakes that have happened, but like mistakes are things that we learn from. And I'm just wondering, what kind of mistake and how did it change your practice?
Yeah, that's a good question. So perhaps earlier in the process, some staff perhaps perceive this as a mandate from the top down, when it actually wasn't. But I think maybe along the way we could communicate that a little better, saying that moral imperative of it is why it's happening, not because it's a district mandate or because of any other reason. We all along said it was going to be a slow process. Maybe we thought there was an end in mind as far as a time. We learned pretty quickly that's not the case.
See, there's something. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is hard work. It's heavy work, but it's not the type of work that you can have a redo at because it's founded in relationships.
So let me just ask the similar question in a different way. Are there things that you're doing now that you didn't do when you started out as a vice principal?
Yeah, I think you just know the process. You start to understand the needs of people. You understand that the needs of people are forefront. At the beginning of my career, it was survival and trying to understand the system. And I remember thinking, I need to understand all the district policies and the process of things that happen from a day to day. And then the challenge as a beginning administrator is trying to find balance because it's such a busy job. And coming out of the classroom, instead of serving 30 students, you're serving 30 or more staff and 400 students. So in my second school, it was a very different school than my first school. So different demographics, a lot of poverty in that school. That wears on you. That's another layer of heavy work. I think everything that I learned in my first two experiences has kind of culminated here. And you just know how to navigate relationships, how to navigate parent relationships. We learn the importance of following through and doing what you say you're going to do. And you just know how to have that life balance and understand what can be put off till tomorrow or what needs to be done today.
So what do you do for yourself to take care of yourself to keep that life balance?
Every day after work, I'm on my way home, I'm stopping at the gym, and I love to go to the gym after our days of work, and that's my balance right there. And then I have a great family at home, so I love spending time with them as well. So my day is pretty routine. I get up early, I come to work early. The day goes really quickly. I don't sit down for much of a lunch, but after that day ends, I'm out of here, and I've learned to leave work at work. Not that I don't make myself available, but I tend not to think about work much unless I have to. But
Awesome. And now, advice for somebody who's just, say, starting out, or even just, I don't know if you have, for example, staff that might be considering going into administration. If you can picture that person or persons on your staff, what kind of advice would you give them?
what are the reasons you want to go into admin? And what are the reasons that you want to be in that particular leadership role? We have lots of staff who are great leaders and they work very hard, but do they want to go into that administrative part of it? I love the role of administration because you get to connect with so many different people, whether it's students, staff, or families. And then you have your colleagues at the district and or at other schools. So it's just such a far-reaching role. But that's the question I would ask is, what do you want to do it for? And are you ready to serve? Because essentially that's the foundation of what we do, is serving the people at your school. And it's not just students, it's staff, it's parents, it's community partners, it's all of it.
And I have to ask this now because you've raised those as great questions. So what was it that caused you to move from the classroom to administration? What was it for you? Asking you your own question. This is really mean. I recognize that, but what was behind that?
Yeah, you just have a general sense of wanting to lead, and leading a bigger picture, I think, is what made me go towards administration. And I wanted to have that impact on a broader community than just my classroom. We know that, but how much of an impact can you have when you're leading a school? And that essentially was what I wanted to do, is have that positive impact on a greater population.
What I did keep hearing through, and we've talked about this too, is the lens that you view things through. And you mentioned that a few times, and how it impacts your work, right? Whenever you're able to change the lens or alter the lens a little bit, it just gives people a different perspective, and therefore takes the work in a different way. And I just thought that was really important. There's a lot of things in what you said, but the lens part stood out to me, of course. Yeah.
I would say over the years, that's been my biggest learning, is trying to broaden my own perspective and hear multiple sources. Even if I don't agree with it, or if I think it's wrong, I can at least listen and have that professional dialogue about their perspective if it doesn't match mine.
Really appreciate you taking the time. I know that you don't sit down much during the day. So I don't know if
and he couldn't even eat while he was talking to us.
You could have eaten while we were talking, but really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, and wish you all the best with this work.
Thank you for the invite, and I would love to follow up again sometime.
Like Dave said in our conversation, becoming an anti-racist school community is heavy work, and it's important work. Being invitational, listening to stories, and broadening your own perspective are important parts of this work. Thinking about school administration? Then ask yourself Dave's questions. What do you want to do it for, and are you ready to serve? Find out more about our work with school leaders at www.restorative.ca. Email me, stan@restorative.ca. So let's get to know the people in our school communities and keep asking those open-ended questions as school leaders.